Debugging in Adobe Commerce can be fun sometimes, but it's generally not fun to encounter an error like this after running setup upgrade. How do you solve this type of a problem? Well, I'm going to give you a shortcut that's actually going to focus on this specific problem, but ultimately I think it's going to help enlighten you as far as how Magento works with setup upgrade and the database in general. The goal is here to save you time and frustration here in the future as you tuck this piece of knowledge here into your brain through today's Knowledge Bite. Let's take a look at the question and the answer that we have here. You are working on a new module in Magento 2 that requires you to create a new table using DB Schema XML. This new table uses a foreign key relationship. After making the required changes, you run setup upgrade, you encounter this error. The table is not getting created. How do you solve this problem? All right, we have several answers. You need to use a install schema script as it is impossible to add a foreign key using DB Schema. You need to ensure your module is loaded after the existing module, as the load order in Magento is causing Magento to miss the relation table. Or C, you need to ensure the table existing table name is present in DB Schema, as it may have been created elsewhere. Now, this is actually what I would say somewhat of a funny one, because the answer that we came up with is entirely different than the answer that I think literally every single other person chose here on this question. See, everybody else chose answer B when we did the social post version. And by the way, if you haven't already, make sure to follow me, Joseph Maxwell, on LinkedIn. Of course, subscribe here on YouTube as well. And you'll get these weekly knowledge bites here from sharing from our knowledge on Adobe Commerce, and some really great tips here. But anyways, most of the answers that were chosen here was B. And I was a little surprised by that, because to my knowledge, load order does not affect anything when it comes to installing or understanding relationships. To my understanding, load order does affect is the order in which data patches would be applied technically, unless we use there is a way to set some load order, some dependencies when it comes to data patches. But in this case, we're not necessarily talking about data patches. This is talking about foreign keys. So let's put that as a quick caveat out there. Now, however, as I just demonstrated, this is the error that this entire question is based around right here. Undefined array key, and it gives a table name. Let's quickly look at the code and see exactly how this is behaving. So in order to mock this up, we have my test table. I threw this one in here, and the situation would be, let's say there is somewhat of a shared database. Generally speaking, sharing a database with other applications when it comes to e-commerce and another application is not a good idea, but perhaps there is just an extra table that's in the database somehow. Maybe that ultimately was brought in with Magento, actually brought in with a install schema script. Maybe it was imported and it's just been sitting there, and now it's time to actually bring it to life, etc. There's a number of cases that this could have ended up like this. Now, we're going to talk about the best practices going forward, but this is the current state of the database. And so as you're working on this, you jump in here, you add a constraint, you're mocking this up, you're designing this. It's all going well until, again, you run this right here. Now, the problem really comes back to that Magento doesn't understand a table that is not in DB Schema. It doesn't know how to reference or relate those two together. And as such, it errors out. So I'm kind of giving you the answer without ultimately giving it to you, but the answer really is C here. You need to ensure that the existing table name is present in DB Schema, as it may have been created elsewhere. So again, created elsewhere like a install schema script, or just somehow maybe imported into the database at a previous time, and it's always been there. At the end of the day, that table's definition has to be loaded into DB Schema, and ultimately you do want to whitelist it, and that will solve the error that you see here in this message right here. So this error seems scary. It could be scary, but at the end of the day, it is not scary, because ultimately it's just a matter of adding this my test table 2 into DB Schema. And there is your knowledge bite for this week.